Usually the post-lunch session is quite difficult to do because everyone's busy digesting their food. But we'll try to keep this as lively as possible. And I think this statement of mine is kind of a cliche because almost every conference we say this in a post-lunch session. Anyway, that said, this session is on diagnostics, and there's a lot happening in the diagnostic space. Just to put it in context, these days, if you want a blood test, blood tests are available for as low as 99 rupees, 299, 799, 999. One lab to another lab, they differ. There are no standards as such for what is included or not included in the test. Even the kind of reports you get, and this goes by experience, one lab comes up with a certain set of figures. Few days later, another lab comes up with a certain set of figures which are quite contradictory to the first lab. So with all this happening in the diagnostic space, because it's very easy to set up a lab. If any one of you has some spare pocket money, you can just start a lab. It's a good business to be in. Everyone needs a blood test, right? So that being the case, the entry barriers to setting up diagnostic labs are very, very low. And that's what we want to really talk about here, about the mushrooming of pathological labs and how they are actually, one, disrupting the existing players, impacting the existing players. So while I have Dr. Sushil Shah from Metropolis Labs here, Arvind from Agilus, and Dr. Lal from Dr. Lal's PathLabs, obviously. So I'd like to take this question first to Sushil. If you could just tell me, what is the problem here with so many companies coming in at a very low entry barrier?
Thank you. I think what is happening is nothing new. The same kind of a thing happened about 2 decades ago, when suddenly there was a realization upon some people that there is a big scope in this field of diagnostics, and there is a huge opportunities. So suddenly, in few years' time, there were multiple international diagnostic companies who came in to the Indian market. And besides that, there were quite a few pharma companies who jumped in, who came into diagnostics. After they came in, they realized that actually the market is not as big as they think it is. They did not realize that the market is not as lucrative as they thought it is supposed to be. So with all these things together, and these are all big companies. When I'm talking about companies, the 3-4 foreign companies which came, there was one specialty laboratories from California, there was one Gribbles from Australia, there was an MDS from Germany, and there was one Quest from USA. These are all big companies. The turnover of Quest is today $22 billion for a pathology laboratory. It's as big as that. So all these people, after they came in and when they started operating in the field, they realized that it is not what it looked like. So they tried for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And I think within about 5 to 10 years' time, almost all these companies who came in, all the 4 foreign companies, as well as the few pharmaceutical companies who started, almost all of them, they closed shop. And all of them went out of the business. Because this turnover which we have, this profitability is not really a drop in the ocean for these big like pharma companies or for these international chains. It's very minuscule amount of money it involved. So they all closed shop and they went away. Now I think today the similar thing has started all over again. That suddenly there is a renewed interest in the diagnostic market. I think it happened because of 2 or 3 reasons. One reason it happened is because press, I think, played this up. The diagnostic market is a huge scope and there are a lot of opportunities and everybody's ears perked up. They said, oh, this is a great field to be in. Second thing which happened was that suddenly, during one of the times, there was a suddenly spurt in the pricing, share pricing of these diagnostic companies. Like Dr. Lal's, they went up to 3,900 or 4,000, almost doubled up. Ours also went up to 3,500 from which used to be in 1,900, 2,000. So when these went up, everybody thought, wow, this is the field in which all of us should be there. So everybody decided, okay, this is a field, everybody should be there, and people jumped in. The first was these digital pathology players who were, they were not digital pathology, but digital pharma, where they used to go and provide pharma products at home. Farm Easy and multiple companies, they came into it in a big way, healthier. Multiple companies came in. After that also, there were one or two Indian pharmaceutical companies which has jumped in. And with the result now, what has happened, again, there are 10, 15 new players who have come into the market suddenly, primarily into the digital healthcare. Now in pathology, the market is, you can say it comprises of three basically parts. One is preventive healthcare, in which most of these people have jumped in because that's the easiest branch to handle. You don't have to have too many tests. You can have a limited array of tests, and the number of tests that you are doing are usually routine tests. There is nothing very specialized about it. And there was very little competition that time. So everybody jumped into this preventive healthcare. The second is the chronic disease, like say diabetes care or thyroid disorders, where patients have to repeatedly come and get the testing done. And the third is where patients have got acute illness. Like, if somebody has heart problems, you may have infectious disease like dengue or hundreds of things, kidney failure, what a whole lot of things. So these are the three broadly divided branches. Now, as I said, most of these people came into the preventive healthcare. Chronic disease, again, these new players can make some dent to some extent because they offer all the cheap prices. Because what happens, every new player in any field, when they come into the market, first thing, they drop the prices. They think that's the only way to enter the market. And you liquidate any field, that's what everybody does. And diagnostics was not an exception. This is exactly what happened. Okay, everybody dropped prices. And as you were just mentioning, they put down 2,000 rupees, cross 1,000 rupees, cross 1,250 rupees, cross 500 rupees. So there is no end to these crosses which goes on. It goes from anywhere to anywhere. So that's why this field has come in. So I think the chronic disease, it will make some impact. But where it comes to the acute disease, where the patient actually requires the testing, and where there are your own family members are involved, none of these people will go to these operators who are coming as the digital players and all, because it involves your family members, and you want to go to somebody who is tried and tested. You don't want to go and try with any Tom, Dick and Harry. So with the result, what happens that people tend to go to them. So according to me, our kind of labs which are there will not be affected much as far as acute diseases are concerned. Okay. Chronic disease, to some extent, it may be affected. But everything is not bad. There are some good things. Say, for example, one bad thing is these people have come in, they have dropped the prices dramatically, which actually is going to harm the industry. All these players who have dropped the prices have again increased the prices now because they could not sustain the losses for so long. So they've again gone and increased the prices. But one good thing which has come out of this is that earlier the preventive healthcare industry was very, very minuscule. Nobody was paying much attention to it, neither the clinicians nor the laboratories. It was very little bit in limelight. But today, with all these new players who have come in, with the marketing that they did, publicity they did, write-ups which came, more awareness has been created. So actually now this preventive health checkup has picked up in a big way, okay, which has opened one more segment for us. So I think keeping this in mind, I feel it is not all bad. There are a few good things which have happened.
Right. Anand, first to come to you, how do you maintain the quality of lab reports between labs? Because there's a vast difference. We go to one lab to another one. The report quality differs quite a bit. Should there be some kind of standardization quality in diagnostics here?
Yes. Thank you, Roshun. And it's a great pleasure and honor to be here as part of this panel. To be, on both sides, I have the stalwarts and pioneers who have shaped this industry with me. And I think I should say that first before I start. So this, when you talk about quality, as Dr. Shah also pointed out, so we have low entry barriers. So that is one of the key aspects here. And we have about 1,500 on 1,50,000 laboratories across the country. Even this number, we really don't know whether this number is right. It could be even more, considering the kind of network that we have across the country in terms of labs which are present. So, but how do we actually ensure that quality is there in all these labs? So it is something where we don't have any particular regulatory mechanism at this point of time. Even the, what we talk about NABL and such ISO 15189 accreditations, they are more voluntary rather than mandatory. So this actually makes it even more difficult. So that with this kind of a backup, how do we actually ensure that there is a quality service which is available for people across the country when 70% of clinical decision making is dependent on laboratory reports? So that's where, you know, there are 2-3 aspects which we need to look at. One is how do we make sure that there are the right labs which are run, because how do we enforce the Clinical Establishment Act or the various acts that we have in the country as far as clinical establishments are concerned, so that you have labs in some states. There's also conflict between how center looks at it and states look at it, and different states look at it differently. So there are in some states where, you know, they allow only pathologists to operate the laboratories and they don't allow the medical technologists to operate the laboratories. But that is not fully enforced. So what happens is you have mushrooming of labs. And even the medical technology as a profession itself is not very clearly defined. You know, you can have a certificate course, you can have a diploma course, and still you can become a technologist and you can start a lab. So there's no standardization there as well. So how do we bring about standardization at that level as well from the government, so that you have a council for medical technologists, so that they have accreditations like what we have in other countries like Europe or in the Middle East, also in some parts of Africa and US. So medical technologists are given grades. So there are different grades of medical technologists who can sign out reports to certain levels. So if there are 3,000, 4,000 tests which are there in the laboratory science today, most of the labs do only about 50 to 100 tests. It's only large reference laboratories like Agilus Diagnostics or Metropolis or PathLabs who do about 4,000 to 5,000 a variety of tests. But these smaller laboratories which do about 50 to 100 tests, so they may have an opportunity where, you know, a qualified medical technologist could report those tests. So with 7,000 pathologists being there in the country only, so it's not also possible for us to fully go to a situation where all labs are managed only by pathologists. So there should be a midway between these two. Another important aspect is that, you know, how do we use today's technology? Today we have teleradiology, which is being effectively used. And teleradiology is also accredited by, you know, accepted and accredited. Similarly, in digital pathology, we are now, even CAP is allowing digital pathology to be used. So similarly, how do we actually sign out remote reports for the labs which are in a particular city? If there are 10 labs, do we really need 10 different pathologists sitting in these labs? Or how do we actually use technology so that you have full control of the quality and able to deliver reports like that? So those kind of aspects also need to be looked at so that we are able to manage the quality in a bigger way compared to where we are today in terms of the network of laboratories that we see here.
Right, right. And now I'd like to come to Dr. Lal. I mean, I know you have a complete overview of this space, and I'd like you to make your points. I know you've prepared a huge report for all of us.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay. I'll give you those 8 minutes. Sure. You can.
I am thankful to the Indian Express Group for inviting me to share my views on the changing landscape and new imperatives in the Indian diagnostic sector at this much sought after Financial Express Healthcare Summit 2024. The significance of diagnostics has never been more emphasized than at the present moment. It is a cornerstone of modern medicine, whereas you've just heard, more than 70% of all medical decisions are made on the basis of lab reports. Even in the COVID pandemic, the strategy was to test, track, and treat, which underscored a fundamental truth that without comprehensive testing, planning effective healthcare interventions is not possible. Therefore, diagnostic emerges as an indispensable linchpin in navigating the complexities of modern healthcare. The Indian medical diagnostic sector is undergoing a profound transformation driven by multifaceted factors. Due to low entry barriers, as you've just heard, and practically non-existent government regulations, we have witnessed mushrooming of labs in India. And according to Indian Express itself, currently there are about 3 lakh labs or 300,000 labs in India, with more than half of them being run as mere testing shops, neglecting concerns for quality, accuracy, and other things. You would be shocked to hear that out of these 3 lakh labs, only 2,142 labs are accredited by the National Accrediting Body or NABL. So that goes for your quality part. For your information, only a handful government-run labs are accredited, and this should now be a wake-up call for the government also to make accreditations mandatory for all government-run labs. So, ladies and gentlemen, you will all agree that overall there needs to be a greater focus on quality, both in the private as well as in the government labs. The private labs must also be encouraged and incentivized to get accreditation in the form of various things like tax rebates, GST input, credit, etc., and many more things. A collaborative effort between the government, industry stakeholders, and the government and the industry stakeholders and accreditation bodies is crucial to bring this reform in Indian diagnostics as a whole. While the sector was historically unorganized, gradually the organized sector has been able to capture more than 50% of the market share, with the pan-India and regional diagnostic chains having about 17% and hospital-based labs having about 37% of the market share. Given the growth opportunities in the sector, many online and conventional healthcare companies, as you've just heard, have also forayed into diagnostics recently. New labs, including the aggregators, relied initially on heavy discounting to attract customers. But this so-called cash burn strategy has proven to be unsustainable, and they've all now significantly increased their prices. The question is whether the government or the industry can stop this gimmickry now and also in the future. Further, most of the reliable diagnostic infrastructure is concentrated in Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities, while the Tier 3 and Tier 4 towns and rural areas are largely underserved. This is an area where the government's public health system plays an important part. Indian government is committed to providing quality diagnostic services for all and was amongst the first countries to publish the National Essential Diagnostics List, or NEDL, which defines diagnostic tests to be made available at various levels at public health facilities. But proper implementation of this list is not being carried out. The government must work with the private diagnostic sector for ensuring availability of essential tests. However, a persistent concern in this domain has been the challenge of very low pricing offered by the government. The principle of differential pricing has been discussed at many national fora, where it has even been endorsed by the Harvard T.H. Chan School for Public Health. The latest news in yesterday's paper that the Supreme Court has warned that if states don't implement the clinical establishment rules or law for standard rates for treatment within 1 month, then it will consider enforcing the CGHS rates for treatment of all patients across the country. This is not a logical action, as the private sector has raised time and again that the CGHS rates are simply unviable and have been determined arbitrarily without having any consideration for actual costs involved in delivering healthcare. For Indian healthcare, including diagnostics, to become truly world-class, the government will have to discuss the way forward in detail with the private industry. Another area where diagnostics holds great importance is in the control of non-communicable diseases or lifestyle diseases, which are responsible for more than 65% deaths in the country. It is estimated that NCDs, which include diabetes, hypertension, cardiac diseases, cancers, liver, kidney, lung diseases, and strokes, cost India a GDP loss of nearly 2% every year and an aggregate of $6.2 trillion. between 2012 and 2030, that is in a span of 18 years, have been lost. It is proven that all NCDs or lifestyle diseases, if detected early, can be better managed, preventing disease progression and further complications. Advancements in diagnostics have made it possible to accurately detect the risk of developing an NCD. To reduce the burden of NCDs, we need to inculcate a culture of regular preventive diagnostic testing and incentivize the public with tax rebates and on preventive testing, and also bring down health insurance premiums. Currently, about 90% of diagnostic testing is being done for acute and chronic diseases. This needs to be reversed. That is, people should get tested in wellness rather than in illness. The future of diagnostics is focused on more personalized, precise, and accessible diagnostic solutions driven by advancements in technology, data analytics, and collaborative research. Several technological advancements have led to an exponential rise in diagnostic capabilities, some of which include point-of-care diagnostics in the form of portable devices, rapid strip-based tests, microfluidic devices, and lab-on-a-chip technologies that offer rapid, decentralized, and cost-effective diagnostic solutions to improve early detection at a mass scale. Telepathology, as you've just heard, which eliminates the challenges associated with limited number of pathologists, mostly concentrated in urban areas, and remote consultation with pathologists and analysis through digital slides and images improve access to high-end testing beyond urban areas. We need a change in government's mindset, wherein because of an acute shortage of pathologists, the 140 crore population of India's reports can be remotely reviewed, validated and digitally signed at a location which is different than the place where the sample was taken and tested. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics are playing an increasingly significant role in analyzing complex diagnostic data, including flow cytometry patterns, genetic sequencing data, and imaging results, leading to faster and more accurate diagnosis. Then multi-omics approach via integration of multiple omics data, including genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, and metabolomics, are providing a more comprehensive understanding of diseases. Precision diagnostics, especially for complex diseases like cancers, wherein next generation sequencing, or what we call NGS-based comprehensive genomic profiling, has led us to a point where one biopsy, one test, and just one report can lead to improved outcomes for cancer patients. You would be shocked to hear that for two persons having, say, colon cancer, the chemotherapy can be different, and this is true in many other cancers and non-cancerous conditions. In conclusion, the future of the medical diagnostics is poised for an unprecedented advancement, growth, and transformation. With rapid technological advancements, increasing awareness, and a concerted push for quality and accessibility, the sector stands at the forefront of healthcare innovation. The integration of artificial intelligence, expansion of preventive healthcare initiatives, and strategic collaborations between public and private entities are set to redefine the diagnostic landscape. As a sector, as leaders of the sector, it is crucial for us to navigate these changes with a commitment to excellence, innovation, and inclusivity for a healthier India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. You've actually answered a lot of my questions that I already had over here, but I think you've also opened up a few more, which will make this discussion a little more interesting. You raised a very interesting point about self-testing with instruments at home, self-diagnosis, kits which are there now. So that is something that kind of, at one level, undermines lab testing for certain basic tests. Do you see that as a threat to the industry? Sushil, if I was to take that to you.
Not really, because see, the science is advancing all the time. As these tests become bedside tests, which can be done by the patients themselves, there are many more tests which are developing. So I think ultimately laboratory's job is not just to do the everything. If there are certain things which are coming into the domain where they are available to the patients and they can do direct testing, provided the quality is good enough. Many of these tests are not up to the mark, but if they are, and if they are doing it, nothing wrong, because there are many more things which are developing day in and day out, and which laboratories will be doing. So laboratories are supposed to be helping these tests to be gone to a higher level rather than continue doing what is at a lower level. So I don't think there is any problem in that.
Okay, okay. The other point Dr. Lal made was on CGS's rates being applicable and also being a little low. And would you agree on that? And if there should be a standardization of rates for testing? Yeah.
Standardization of rates will not be possible. Standardization at different levels. First is to we have to understand that a laboratory is not a structure where you have a homogeneous activity happening. So there are multiple things. So a lab can do, as I was referring earlier as well, can do up to 50 tests. Some labs can do up to 200, 300 tests. There are some labs which can do up to 1,000 tests. There are still labs which do about 5,000 tests. So we call them as stat laboratories, your primary laboratories, secondary laboratories, medium-sized laboratories, then your tertiary laboratories, and then quaternary care laboratories. So when you have this gradation of laboratories, and within the laboratories there are multiple departments which are there, which require skilled professionals from various fields to contribute to that. And the equipment that are required will also be different. So it's difficult to have a standardized kind of a tariff for testing. That is the mainstay here.
Okay, okay. And another point, Dr. Lal, you made was, with so many tests required, do we have adequate skilled manpower in terms of phlebotomists, for example? Is more training required for phlebotomists because they're your first level of, for collection and all that for samples? Do you think we have adequate skilling, or is there a lack over there?
Right now, from the point of view of tier 1, tier 2 cities, we have, enough phlebotomists or, bleeders, as you can call them loosely. But the fact of the matter is that this does not, cover 140 crore people. So we need more laboratory or phlebotomist training schools. We need this specialty to be recognized by the government, which on paper it is, but actually, factually, it is not. And there are so many things that everybody, we ourselves are running some phlebotomy schools, have trained over 5,000, 6,000, phlebotomists. But the CSR money, sometimes you can put in there, sometimes you are not allowed to. So there are lots of other, things which can't be just dismissed. But the plain answer is no. And this is a low-hanging fruit. Right. Where if you have more phlebotomist training, because say one lab will have say 10 collection centers, and 10 collection centers will at least have 20 or 10 phlebotomists. So these people can be picked up right from school and trained in phlebotomy trainings for something like 6 months. So it's a low-hanging fruit even for employment generation for the government.
Right, right, right. I'll also like to take some questions from the audience since we have such an esteemed panel over here. If you'll have any questions, put your hand up. I will get a mic to you. We have one question here. So before we get her question, the other thing I wanted to ask was, pricing of, with the dollar value, in the last few years, the rupee has been depreciating even more and more. So is it possible to, maintain the same kind of cutthroat pricing right now? You mentioned, a lot of them are already burning cash. Right? Is it possible to maintain that kind of pricing?
Actually, if you compare with any other industry, the prices maintenance in diagnostics and pathology particularly is maximum. There are tests for which the prices are not changed for 8 to 10 years. They are still stationary. So the increase in pricing is not like the industry where every year 10%, 15% is increased. It doesn't happen like that here. There are a whole lot of tests where prices are stationary.
Right.
What you are alluding was that sometimes to bring down the price is difficult because most of the reagents which we use are coming from outside.
Yes.
The industry in India is very poor for manufacturing as far as diagnostic reagents are concerned. So reagents which are coming from outside, there is a 25 to 30% duty on that by the government. So that increases the prices even further. So I think in the present scenario, I think as far as the laboratories are concerned, they are doing their best to keep the prices as it is. Unless there is a revision of the prices of the reagents itself from abroad, then the prices usually go up. Or there is an unduly high amount of inflation in India. Under one of these two conditions, it goes up. So by and large, I tell you, the prices don't go up much over here. Even if the people increase the price, it's not more than 5% or 3%, 5%.
Right.
So I think it's quite comfortable.
Right. Your question. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for a very...
Introduce yourself and then...
Yes, I am going to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Sohaila Kapoor. It's a pleasure to be here and to be hearing to all of you. My question comes from the point of view of there coming, artificial intelligence now a lot in the entire healthcare domain. And Dr. Lal, I think you also mentioned the lack of various pathologists. So do you think AI is here to play a significant role when it comes to, identifying outcomes, helping with diagnostics, especially if you have, various various coming in from various parts of, the whole country, you don't have enough pathologists or even, other experts. How do you see AI playing a role, especially when it comes to, radiology and also pathology? And see that as a threat, you see that as a boon. And if I could just add in the same line of thought, what about conducting various validation studies? Because when you have AI coming out with diagnostic outcomes, clinical validation would also become extremely important. So do you have any thoughts? And it's in a way open to everybody here.
Thank you. The artificial intelligence is slightly more difficult to introduce. I'm talking about the histopathology side, which is the real pathology, diagnostic side. So that is slightly more difficult than introducing in radiology. But having said that, we ourselves introduced, AI-based prostatic biopsy many years ago, AI-based breast biopsy many years ago. So the answer is yes. And as more and more, hospitals, nursing homes, or where surgery is being done, and where Indian women finally start getting themselves, say, tested, say for cervical or cervical cancers, etc. There's very low rate of, these, tests which are being carried out in India for reasons, which are only purely social. But breast cancer has now overtaken cervix cancer. And in cervix, cancer of the cervix for screening pap smears, etc., this would have been a real boon. But India never made it to that level. But what I'm trying to say is, yeah. So now imagine a scenario where the government allows, for a moment I say that the government allows that what I was recommending, that testing can be done at a different place, and the validation of that report is done at a different place under somebody else's digital signatures. And one fine day you have so many more millions and literally crores of more people, who are getting themselves tested for these NCDs. Otherwise, the lives in India are not going to improve, very far. So the question is that, yes, at that point of time, artificial intelligence will definitely come in. And you will have millions and hundreds and thousands of results which you have to go through. What artificial intelligence does in our field is it takes away straight away all the normals. Our field, which deals with numericals or numerical numbers, is very easy for computers to pick up. In fact, we have been practicing this for a very long time. The normal reports can be taken out in a split second. It takes out the abnormal reports, in which the pathologist can go back to the testing stage again. That, okay, I don't see, for example, sugar in the urine, but his blood sugar is coming out to be 340. So there is a mismatch. So I want this thing to be retested. So therefore, though that quality of testing will definitely improve.
Yeah, one question here and then here as well.
Am I audible? Yeah, okay, fine. I'm Dr. Kawat from Key Healthcare. So my question to panelists is, how the AI changing the landscape, and what are the three challenges, if you can address to the audience, the three challenges, while you changing the landscape. Thank you.
So AI in laboratory, as Dr. Lal pointed out, has been in use for a long time. So we have moved from rule-based algorithms, which are being used over the last 10 years, to now generative AI sort of models as well. So on multiple fields within the laboratory, we have seen the use cases for AI. So whether it is in digital pathology, where we are doing whole slide imaging, and then on those images, how do we work on those images to create those kind of requirements where you can have an AI-based approach to identify those spots which need to be looked at. And also we have seen that in hematology as well, where where the blood smears are being scanned and then they're screened and then the cells are being sorted out. So those kind of morphology-based testing is where AI has taken an upper role now. But at the same time, what is happening is things where there are some patterns which can be understood, like for example, immunofluorescence assays, where we see a higher increase in autoimmune and allergy disorders now. There are a lot of autoimmune assays that are being done. So there also those images are getting read through AI. So where you are able to generate results at a much faster pace, as well as it removes the subjective errors which could happen in the process. So those are some of the things. Apart from that, as a regular blood test reports, like what Dr. Lal was pointing out in terms of how we have been able to take out normal and abnormal reports as well. So there are systems where we are looking at now clinical decision support. So where we say that, okay, it's not just about a value is 5.5 or 5.6, it's whether that's clinically significant. So how do we ascertain that? That is where, the use of data. Large labs like us have data of, 2 crore patients or 3 crore patients with us. So which actually, if you mine that data, from there, what you get is, you are able to get insights and provide that, for a 40-year-old male, it's not just about the reference interval of that particular test. It's about in that region, suppose in Delhi and Punjab, so this particular region, a 40-year-old male would have a cholesterol level of, what is the range? So that's how, you actually compare your population health data as well as your own trends in your lab. So that kind of longitudinal mapping of reports can also be done through AI.
That's very interesting. Yeah. We'll come back to you. No problem.
Hi, am I audible? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. I specialize in registration of patents and exploitation. So my question is a layman's question. Coming back to the competition in the diagnostics and especially the pathology, given the new players who are offering tests at a very cheap price, as you said that the materials are all imported from overseas. So is there a difference in the materials that they are procuring, or is there a difference in the reports that we get from them? Are they reliable? Because most of the hospitals, they insist on getting the test done from there and they don't accept those reports.
Very interesting question. Do you want to take that? Outside lab reports versus in hospital.
See, just because the reagents have come from outside doesn't mean they are all the same. Like India, outside also there are multiple kind of people, and it can vary from anything to anything. Like a simple example, the cheapest HIV testing that you can do, you can get it for as cheap as 25 rupees per test. And the most expensive one costs over 250 rupees. But the quality differs. So like that, in each test, it will differ depending upon the quality of the test. So to streamline the test charges is very difficult. What Anand told earlier, very difficult. Because a lot of factors are coming in the way. Now, when it comes to the quality of test, that will definitely depend from laboratory to laboratory. What are the procedures they are following? What are the accreditations that they've got? What is the type of equipment they are using? What is the type of training which the staff has had? And multiple factors. What are the supporting systems that you have got? Then all these things will matter where the quality of report will differ. No two things can be exactly same anywhere. Just because it's a test done at one place, it should identically match, elsewhere it doesn't happen in anything. Second thing, somebody also making a mention about uniformity of the pricing. Now, this cannot happen really, because depending upon what is going to be the cost and the income of one person, it's like any field you take. You take a lawyer, you take an architect, you take anything, you take pharma company, do the prices of product same with the company which produces in Jalgaon and company where Glaxo is selling. Same tablet with the Jalgaon company will give you for 10 paisa, that will cost you 2 rupees. So, we are in the free economy. We are in the world where everybody has got his own price. Lawyers today charge anywhere from 500 rupees to 30 lakhs of rupees, depending upon the lawyer.
Yeah, sure.
I pointed this thing out, what you were asking, even to the government of India. And I said, why have you forgotten that the Indian Railways has differential pricing for unreserved second class, for reserved second class, for chair car, for 2-tier AC, 3-tier AC, and first class first. So it is also something, you cannot have one size fits all. Well, somebody has been in the field for 75 years, and he's competing against somebody, and with flawless reputation, with somebody who's just lowered the prices, and you're supposed to go there. So what we have actually recommended to the government is, both in hospitals and in non-hospital scenario, the government should have differential pricing. And this, as I said in my talk, I said this also, the Harvard Medical School has endorsed this.
Right. One last question, then we need to wind up. You wanted a question? Yeah?
My question is being answered.
Oh, it's already answered. Okay, great.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, my question is, if a major player cannot agree on a uniform pricing, then why can we blame certain player who is willing to drop the prices?
We're not blaming, he's asking whether we're blaming players for pricing very low, dropping prices.
Nobody is blaming. The point is, for everything, there is a basic price which has to come. If you're running an organization, everybody, if is getting at a certain price, the reagents, certain is the running cost of the laboratory, certain is the amount of profitability, certain is the salaries which you are paying to good class people. Now, if the cost is going to come to a certain level and somebody else is charging less than that, how do you justify? That means there are shortcuts being taken. Now, what are the shortcuts? We don't know unless somebody goes into the lab and finds out what are the shortcuts. But obviously, there are shortcuts being taken. So all that we are saying is that this dropping of the pricing and to an extent which is not feasible.
Not viable. Yeah.
That is where the problem comes. Just dropping has got no issue at all. If somebody says, okay, I want to work on a no profit, no loss basis, fine. But that is not the case. What we are talking about is the levels coming down below the feasibility level. That I told earlier. Okay, all these people who drop the prices, they all gone and increased again.
Increase the prices.
But
Okay,
the major player, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the major player can come to an agreement where the pricing for all the tests, which are basically conducted by high-level technicians, should be the same with the major players. Like Metropolis, Dr. Lal, they can have the similar pricing. If let's not talk about those labs which are opening up every day and closing down. Let's talk about the player who works in the market since quite some time. They can come to an agreement that this should be the uniform pricing for this particular test.
But if I'm not mistaken, at least these three major labs have pricing almost in the same bracket.
Range. Okay, we are actually out of time. We can have a couple of these questions offline also. So I would like to thank my panelists here for this very interesting session. I hope you've got some good takeaways from it. Thank you, Dr. Lal. Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Dr. Shah. Thank you.